What do you as a commission intend to do? Please join other counties and get this situation cleared up. Can we sue the supervisor of elections or anyone else? Can you as a commission, find out how to change the law controlling the poll workers? Can the mayor's question to the supervisor be answered? My question to the supervisor was, is there a policy or a law in place that dictates whether or not poll worker errors can invalidate someone's vote? Is that it?
I think when we read the law, that's not a reason. That was the reason that she was given, but that's not in compliance with the law.
Okay. So, yeah, that's the answer to that. Okay, supervisor. Can we sue the supervisor of elections? Or, I guess, are there any things that you want to address on that?
Maybe later on, after all the comments, we'll talk about potential options.
Okay.
And that's certainly one of the options.
Okay. Okay. I do not feel disenfranchised by the voting process. Martin Watson, 1817 Montague Street. Michael Chase Flack. Mr. Robinson, I don't have anything attached to this.
Then disregard.
Then disregard it, okay. Michael Chase Flack, followed by Greg Rice.
Michael Chase Flack, 1609 North D Street, Epworth. On the morning of the election, my partner, Ron Fox, same address, we showed up to the polling site, and we've never had a Florida driver's license because we own a home, but we don't take a homeowner homestead exemption. We own a farm up north that we would prefer to do that, actually. And my partner went with his driver's license, and they said, no, you can't use that. You can't vote with another driver's license from out of state. I was employed by the U.S. Department of State. I have the U.S. State Department driver's license, and they told me no to that as well. And it's a mystery to me how I can go into any U.S. embassy or military installation, but I can't vote in Lake Worth, Florida, with a federally issued ID. But it's one of those things where, would you rather be happy or right? So we went home, fetched our passports out, and voted. But it is a training matter. I want to assume the best intentions, because I couldn't come up with any reason why they would push us away. The last couple of times we voted there, with the same IDs they told us we couldn't vote with this time. There's an alpha type personality there and it's in I think 3068. We vote at the church at Crestwood and A. And I just think we showed up at the same time, different IDs, and it just was decided that no, that's not acceptable. I never heard that before, but I don't know. Is it illegal to vote with another driver's license or a federal State Department ID? Okay. I mean, so we didn't ruckus or anything, we just voted. But in furtherance to what Ms. Lowe was talking about, the location at Oasis Healthcare and Rehab, we have somebody we know that's in that facility long-term, and I have no idea why that would be a polling site. That is a nursing and rehab, but it's also a locked facility. So before I went to vote that morning, I went to drop off some personal things and belongings to this person and to her, and they wouldn't let me in at 7:15. It's an electromagnetic door that is obviously for the safety and security of the residents, because they also have psych and Alzheimer's patients there. And I guess I just find it strange that why in the world is that a voting site? I mean, you can't easily even get into there. You'd have to stand there and wait to be let in. And that was 7:15 on the morning of the election. So that's my experience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Flack, appreciate it. Greg Rice? Oh, sorry, Vice Mayor, excuse me.
Just want to go to Glenn. over the years, we hear so much about, voter ID and what's the proper voter ID. What is the proper ID required to vote?
Well, certainly a U.S. State Department ID would seem to meet that criteria.
Well, what about an out-of-state driver's license? I think a photo ID saying, hi, I'm Joe Smith.
I've never looked at the out-of-state issue, it would seem logical, but I know for sure his should have not been a problem at all. Neither one should have been a problem, they voted there before, why this year all of a sudden it was an issue? I hadn't heard half the stories we're hearing tonight, and the more I hear, just like Commissioner McBoy being really upset and kind of almost appalled by this, the more you hear, the more my hair stands up and says, oh my gosh, how could this be? That all these folks are having such a difficult time exercising a constitutional right to vote.
Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Boyd.
I mean, I don't know what the rules are either on what kind of IDs, but I could certainly imagine a poll worker that didn't have extensive training seeing an ID from another state says, well, you're in New York State, you can't vote here, this is Florida. I could see somebody coming to that conclusion. Hopefully, the technology of the system would say, hey, you're in the system, this is your registered place, and I don't care that you have another ID somewhere else. Oh, but somebody might not know that. They should they might not.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rice?
Hi, Greg Rice, 511 Leesmont Avenue. My experience echoes the same, I think, pattern that I've heard a lot of people talking about here tonight. I voted at the Baptist Church on Main Street. I got there just after 7. I had an early morning meeting that I had to get to after that. I walked up to the precinct out, give her my driver's license, my voter ID card, and she put it in the little slot, whatever it was. And she couldn't get it to read or register or whatever, and she moved it around, and she was doing the same thing that other people have said, similar to Commissioner Lowe, and could not get the thing to read. Now, even though I had a meeting in the morning that I had to be at, I wasn't so time crunched that I was worried about not being able to make my meeting. So they told me about the same thing. They said, we can't seem to find you in the system. Are you sure this is I said, trust me, I've been voting here for a long time. Well, the supervisor, or what do they call the head poll worker or whatever, he was outside at the time. And he walked in, there wasn't hardly anybody in the room, there was me and 2 other people. Anyhow, so he goes, this is Mr. Rice, he's voted here a lot. And so she finally got the thing to read my driver's license. And she did apologize. She said, I have to tell you, this is the first time I've used this equipment outside of the training session that we had. So I said, no problem, no problem. Well, the lady that was standing next to me was trying the same thing and was not getting the results that she was looking for. And like it's been said before here this evening, she couldn't wait. She had to leave. And unfortunately, I don't know if she came back or not. I did vote. I voted and I left the building. And as was mentioned earlier, Lori went to the voting place, could not find it, and she did have to vote with a provisional ballot. And I've never used a provisional ballot before either. And I voted probably as long as Mr. Tim has, even though I look a lot younger than he does.
You're just short.
In more ways than one. Anyhow,
All right, a little
okay,
more.
don't read too much into that. Yeah. Is HR in here?
Stick to the facts there, Mr. Rice.
Anyhow, so when I did leave the voting place, and I spoke with Lori later that morning after my meeting, and she told me she, on the way to work, in her experience, having to fill out a provisional ballot, which she's never done before, she said. And I said, I don't know, what to tell you. I said, you voted there before. So anyhow, she did leave, and fortunately, she talked with somebody, I guess it was Loretta, and Loretta had told her to go back and vote again, and if she hadn't have done that, she probably wouldn't have been able to vote, or her vote would not have counted, I'm sorry. But the thing that upsets me most is the fact that, yes, we do invest in a lot of technology, but what Lori also told me is that when she did fill out the ballot, put it in the envelope, it was placed as lackluster, as somebody else has said, and a lot of people have said, on a chair, not in a box, with several other envelopes sitting on that same open chair. And with all the things that's going on in this world, and believe me, Teresa Laporte lost her job over an incident, back with the dangling Chad several years ago. And it's a travesty in this day and age with all the technology that we have at our disposal that these kind of things happen. But why does it continue to happen here in Palm Beach County? I'm not trying to start a witch hunt either, but I do think that we have a problem. And I want to thank you guys for taking the time to address the problem. Whether anything happens to this or not, it at least needs to be heard in an open forum, in a public forum. Too many lives have been and lost for the right that we all take for granted. And yes, it is our responsibility to vote. It's our responsibility to know the issues, to know the candidates and all that. But first and foremost, everybody's vote should be counted. Thank you.
Mr. Rice, I'm just trying to see her,
She, her vote, provisional, would not have counted. It's a good thing she went back, because the clerk staff made an error, and that vote would not have counted. So it's good she went
it
back.
says, voter return to vote a regular ballot, no party on front, election clerk error. That was hers as well. Lori. Miller. Okay, Tabby Panza?
Young man.
Yeah.
I know that.
Hi, all. Tammy Panza, 116 North Ave. I didn't come here to speak. I didn't really think I had a topic that was nowhere near as exciting as any of the stories I've heard today. I have a position on the bond. I don't care who wins, as long as everyone's vote counted.
I'm
I
sorry,
think-
I have to go across the board, we can't talk about the bond issue at all, it's just the voting process, I'm sorry,
It
Ms.
is.
Panza.
It is
Okay.
actually. If the votes had not been counted and I was not pleased, I still would have felt that the election would have been, sorry, I'm not speaking well about this, but wouldn't want to have won an election unfairly. I don't think that the provisional votes being thrown out were fair. I'd rather have the provisional votes counted and change the votes, however many, in the opposite direction that I would have chosen. So I think that I voted early both times, the last 2 times anyway, because I thought it was easier. I had no problem going into Lantana voting. It's not a precinct, it's just you walk in there and you vote and you leave. They had the technology to find me. I did not vote provisionally, and I don't understand how they have to make it so difficult, where when I have voted off, not early, so to speak, I have voted at 4 different places, and I really haven't lived here all that long. I voted at the Second and M, I voted at the Episcopal Church, I voted at the Shuffleboard Courts, voted 2 times, I think, at Episcopal, or not the Episcopal, the Congregational. I don't know why it has to be so difficult if you can vote early, and they can find you in a computer. I say you should be able to vote anywhere you want to, because they have the technology now. So it doesn't have to be so difficult, and people shouldn't have to go through these problems. So that's all I want to say. It doesn't have to be that hard, and it appears that it's quite difficult for many people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Panza. All right. Oops. Just another one? Right. Okay, that's it for the cards. Glenn, do you want to take it from here?
Well, at this point, I guess I'd want to have a little bit of a discussion about which direction, or multiple directions, if any, the commission wants to go. I mean, one would be following up, if you want us to follow up with the individuals that spoke tonight, see if there's more information, get more names, facts, so that if there is ever a lawsuit, I'm not really suggesting that we go down that path, but if there is, at least the witnesses are still fresh. It's like any incident, if there's a traffic accident, you want the names of the witnesses then. Going back 6 months later, you're never going to find the witnesses. So I'm glad you had the meeting tonight, because obviously a lot of people came forward with a lot of issues, and we were keeping track of the names, and the clerk has the names. So if you wanted to go down the path of doing further investigation, that would be one thing we would do, is be to contact the witnesses. The potential lawsuit issues, because a couple of questions about lawsuit would be, basically the conduct of the election, asking the judge to look at, was this election, and I say this election, I'm not just talking about Lake Worth, the August 26th election, conducted fairly and properly under the laws? And if not, hopefully a judge would say to the supervisor, and not just wag the finger, but actually write an order that says, you have to comply with the laws. Provisional ballots shall be counted, as the law says, unless there is evidence by a preponderance of the evidence on the voter's problem, not your clerks making mistakes. You might want to pursue the sunshine law issue as to whether or not, the people that were there really had access to a public meeting. Our clerk was there, I don't want to put Pam on the spot, but from your vantage point, was it a properly conducted sunshine law meeting? Was it a proper meeting?
Not particularly when two or more of the members left the room and had discussion outside with the microphone, the tape recorder turned off, and they were gone for quite some time and then would come back in, and this occurred more than one time, that they just on a regular basis left, talked, came back in, and then conducted themselves.
So the whole sunshine, and again, the mayor was there as well, you couldn't even hear what was being said, and we were within 3 to 4 feet of the people that were talking, and we couldn't hear what they were saying, let alone.
And they
people in the
said,
audience.
but they said, it's not my job to speak so that you can listen.
Exactly.
That was actually said when they were in there. In addition, there was also one question that was, I forget what it was, but they left the room and came back and then all of a sudden had an answer for it. And again, people left the room away from the table. So, and I forget what that, do you remember, were you there? I'm not sure if Christie
I'm not
was
sure
there.
if Christie was there, but I've heard that as well. So those are really the two from a legal standpoint. Was the election conducted in accordance with the law? And if so, do we go to a judge at some point and say, look into this and listen to the evidence, listen to the people who are here today? And was there something wrong so that in the future it's done right? And secondly, does the canvassing boards, did their meeting comply with the sunshine law? And if not, hopefully an order is entered that says in the future you shall conduct a meeting just as the city council. And I think frankly part of the problem is the supervisor is used to being, constitutional officers work on their own, they're independent, that they don't have sunshine law meetings. Certainly her lawyer was there, and he's a very good lawyer and he understands the sunshine law, but she apparently did not, and certainly didn't want to comply with it. The third issue might be the public records law, depending on how they respond to the request that we've been making for public records, and able to make copies of things so we can answer some of the questions that you have. So those would be 3 potential. I don't think anything is a rush. There's no deadline looming. Just for the audience purposes, if there was an election contest challenge, which you've heard the commission say repeatedly, that's not what anybody's interested in, there are deadlines on that. It's 10 days after the certification. But since I'm not hearing any mention that this be a contest of the election results, then you don't have a looming time limit. There could be some investigation. We could have conversations with other elected officials from other municipalities, if that's the path you want to go down.
Yeah, I think that's safe to assume that, number one, I would feel more comfortable if you did follow up with the people that, and got that information there. I think possibly after maybe us having this meeting, other municipalities might have the same if their elected officials experience a high number of emails and whatnot in regards to any kind of irregularities at the polls. And then maybe we can pursue, if a lot of people had the same thing, some sort of joint effort to, I need clarification on the issues. If a poll worker makes a mistake and a provisional ballot is not counted because of a poll worker mistake, what's the rule on that? There's got to be a very clear and definitive rule. Supervisor of elections' job is to make sure that every vote counts. She said that numerous times over and over again, regardless of party, regardless of issue, regardless of anything. It's about our right to vote. And why do all of these not count? Because of clerk error. That's a big issue. It should be a concern to everybody. I'm not interested in contesting the results of the election. I'm not interested in anything other than the fact we've got an election coming in November, and I want to make sure that our election process is handled professionally and correctly. And we obviously have heard a lot of stories where it wasn't. So that's my biggest concern. Commissioner Amoroso?
I agree, and at the end of the day, it's about everybody's vote being counted. And Glenn, I kind of disagree with you a little bit about urgency, because again, we have an election coming up in November. We really need to, move forward and try to get some of the clarity prior to November, otherwise we're gonna hear the same thing.
I kind of misspoke on that. When I said sense of urgency, you know, in the legal world, if there's a 10-day deadline to file a lawsuit, that's a sense of urgency.
Okay.
So I'm not saying it's not urgent, and you might not want to do this in a week or 2 weeks, but it's not something that would have to be filed, say, by Monday.
Okay.
I think we need to reach out to other cities and try to figure out what's going on, maybe through the League of Cities, Florida League of Cities. But we need to move forward, we need to address the people's issues now. One that jumps out on the list that did not get counted is Anna Maria Windish Hunt. This person is at all our meetings, she's very, she volunteers for everything. I think she would be very upset to know that her vote did not count.
I think everybody would be upset to know that their vote didn't count.
Absolutely.
You walk out, you hand that poll worker your ballot, and you think, okay, I did my job. And they don't fill out the paperwork properly, or they put the wrong thing, or they don't put your party affiliation on it. That's the problem. I walked out thinking I voted, and I didn't. I didn't find out till today, and only because we requested it. They didn't have to provide that information. They didn't have to let anybody know, according to the supervisor of elections' own words. She didn't have to notify anybody that they weren't counting their vote. She didn't have to notify anybody that that there was a telephone number that they could call to find out if their vote. She didn't have to notify anybody about any of the process. It was just the rule. So where's the rule, I ask? Where's the rule, where's the law, where's the policy? Contact your attorney. Commissioner Zerdy?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, we talk about technology here, and we get on our computers and we want things like now. We look it up, we get it now. I'm sure there's the technologies there that, one of the things that stood out to me when I voted, and I didn't seem to really have any problem, but was curious to me, was to go and put my license up there, and I'm like, well, where do I sign? Where do I put my, write down again? I know that I signed here, and if there was ever an issue, I could say, well, go to your list, I was there. There isn't that. That made me feel uncomfortable, and at least with the technology, you should be able to, the next day, within the time period of what might be urgent, to look my name up and say, you voted, and say, oh good, you did get it. If I go look on the list and it didn't show up, but I know I was there, how would I prove it? Well, if I didn't sign anything, it's just lost in cyberspace here. So I'm very concerned about how far the technology is going to something that doesn't have any physical evidence that it really occurred. Yeah, there's a ballot, but the ballot got put in, we're not on the ballot. It's just something we filled out and stuff through the machine. So I would like to get some feedback on this in the general sense of how this technology is going, why we're going down this path. If it is truly for benefit, then the benefit should be verification that we did vote, that it was counted. And that would be really important in the benefits of this thing going this way. So that's the main thing on my mind. And the second one would be, I would be very interested to find out from other municipalities in the county, then where, if they had similar sessions like this yet, or are they going to?
Right, I agree.
What happened from them? Is there interest in collecting, that information, or getting together, and then having an official meeting with the supervisor of elections? Why can't we all have something like that so that we can do what these folks here did here today too? Bring that information to her collectively and say, why, get real answers in the sunshine of what was going on here.
Agreed. Commissioner McCoy?
Couple questions, some comments. I agree with the suggestion that we should team up with other municipalities, whether individually or through the League of Cities or some other, however we do it. I think we should find out what other people are doing and maybe encourage them to have sessions, something like this too. I personally am not crazy about the idea of going the lawsuit direction, but perhaps could be talked into it either way. It seems pretty clear that there were technical difficulties early in the day. It seems fairly clear, again, as a lay person more or less, that some of the fixes for the technical things taking ballots out of a stack of them, not having them in a box, seems like there's clear room for improvement. I guess one question related to that that I'd have for my fellow commissioners is, do we want to somehow, and I don't know who would do it, but city manager, the city attorney, somebody, put together out of what we've heard, a list of, these are some of our concerns.
Yeah.
It seems like that would be a sensible document to put together, and at least send it to them and say, you know, these are things we heard, we put this list together, we looked at the list, we all agreed that's a pretty accurate list, you know, please keep us informed how you're gonna address these things. And that, I agree with Commissioner Amoroso, there's an election coming up, so having that cycle completed, you know, within the next month or two seems, there's certainly that urgency to it. Then I've got one question, this one is just curiosity for the city attorney. I'm seeing on this list, and I don't know whether this is the supervisor of elections list or our list that we put together the spreadsheet, but either way, it seems like the yellows kind of have the day, and the yellows, if I well, maybe the color isn't relevant. The thing that strikes, that pops out the most is no party indicated on front, and then in parentheses, election clerk error. The fact that that seems to be the most common reason that something wasn't counted makes me wonder, is there something in the state statutes that says a provisional ballot cannot be counted if it doesn't have the party on it?
No, in fact, if you look at the front page of what the person fills out, it doesn't ask for their party affiliation. It's not even a request. Even on the second page, where you get to where...
Wait a minute, no, it says here that I am registered in the blank party. I do solemnly swear, so
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. The person fills this out. But then on the second page, the clerks are the ones that don't indicate that party affiliation. So the person filled it out. The person filled out everything they're supposed to do. But if it says in parentheses, election clerk error, it's because the election clerk didn't write on the outside envelope.
No, I understand that, and I understand that we're all quite concerned that it seems very unfair that if somebody else makes a mistake, why should my vote not be counted? But the fact that so many of these are no party indicated makes me wonder, is the supervisor of elections constrained by some state law that says you gotta, if you don't have a party, boom, the thing's out? Otherwise, why does it show up so? And I don't know the answer to that.
They're
It
not
says here
highlighted.
in the Westlaw, it says a ballot of a person casting a provisional ballot shall be counted unless the canvassing board determines by a preponderance of the evidence that the person was not entitled to vote. So
And maybe
if
that's-
if the fact that the person, the clerk didn't put on their party affiliation, from our perspective, is
Who cares?
nowhere near that level of
I guess maybe my question would then be to you, Glenn, is could you look into